Hello and welcome. I'm Mary Hoodless. I'm the chair of RDA Murray. It's with great pleasure that RDA Murray is here to host the business breakfast here in Barunga this morning. And what a beautiful morning and how lovely it is. It's just been a real pleasurable drive that we followed the river along yesterday. As you can see, RDA Murray from the map here comes from the Snowy Mountains right through to the South Australian border. I'm one of the eastern residents in the Snowy Valleys area. It's lovely to come out onto the plains. I have a bit of a passion for here. I worked in the Mallee back in the early 80s in Rainbow and Beulah and further down in Neil. So I have great love for this region. I'd like to welcome my fellow board members and ask them to stand and introduce themselves, please. Yeah. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Diane. Thanks, Diane. Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you to board members that travel, and we've certainly got a few apologies from other board members that couldn't be here this time. I'd now like to welcome the Loddon Mallee RDA board and ask them to stand and introduce themselves. Thank you. Thank you, Leonie. Woodrow. Thank you. Thanks, Leanne. Regional partnerships as well, yes, so we don't get confused. Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Glenn. Thanks. Leanne. Thank you, Leanne. Thanks very much, Loddon Murray, for joining us today. And later in the day, we'll be joined by the South Australia Riverlands. Murraylands Riverlands. Get one of them in front of the other, incorrect. Before I ask Edwina to acknowledge country, I'd also like to acknowledge Edwina Hayes as our Director of Regional Development CEO, and thank Edwina for the organisation for today, but also thank the other staff and very new staff that have joined us, Matthew and Kaz. Kaz is probably out in the kitchen somewhere, for all their work in preparation for today. I'd also like to thank the panellists who have supported today's business breakfast. Thank you. I now hand over to Edwina for acknowledgement of country.
I'd like to take a moment to pause and feel the earth beneath our feet, to recall our place in this timeless, bountiful country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land whose stewardship graces this country for more than 65,000 years. We pay our respects to Aboriginal elders from the past, in the present, and those who are striving today to bring their very special relationship with country to our social identity. We endeavour to honour the full depth of history this country knows with gratitude, grace and care. Thank you. So as Mary said, I'm Edwina Hayes. I'm very excited to meet you all today, and particularly to get to know some of our local businesses in the region. Business development isn't historically part of RDA Murray's core business. It's more of a, our role is more around the connection between the federal government and the three levels of government and policy and that sort of development. But I'd just like to thank Hody Boliv, who, when we were talking over Christmas, said in 2024 we would really like to have a business networking event in the region. And with RDA Murray's purpose of understanding more and hearing about voices in the local communities to understand how investments impact local economies, we were able to bring this together here with local businesses, hoping that the local businesses will be able to also pick up some great relationships with other people primarily, but also some opportunities in the future to specifically target where your business is heading and who you might connect with to ensure that you can take advantage of investments in the local economy. So to set the scene today, we have some information about RDA Murray. I am just wondering if we could have a show of hands who actually had heard of RDA Murray before this event. Fantastic. Well, I think that means that we've been doing our work at that policy level, and it's obvious to me, looking around, that it is the small to medium businesses who are here who we haven't previously touched. So just for your for your understanding of what it is that we're doing, our role is to facilitate regional economic development. There's a regional investment framework that we have put on your tables. We have a volunteer board, and their role is to bring their networks and skills to a merit-based board that covers the region and connects local stakeholders into the federal government. So we have quite a close working relationship with the Federal Minister for Regional Development and Territories, Local Government and Territories, Christy McBain. We've been lucky enough to host her 3 or 4 times in the region. Initially, in her first 90 days, she spent 7 or 8 hours at Henty Machinery Field Days being introduced to our agricultural sector, land care and community-based groups, local land services at a state level, those sorts of things. So she has had a very good grounding in the Murray region and the agricultural sector, and I'm really looking forward to continuing her engagement in the infrastructure and renewable energy investment that's coming across the region. Our board, we've met some people today, but I just wanted to indicate the entire board. We also have Alex Anthony as our treasurer. Alex is a former rice and mixed farmer from the Swan Hill, Deniliquin area. She more recently retired as the Community Engagement Manager Director for Murray-Darling Basin Authority. We have Brian Miller, who has a background with New South Wales TAFE and also museums and curation. And Murray Schultz, who is an agri-business specialist, who are all apologies for today. It's sowing season in the east. So Regional Development Australia Murray Inc. is a part of a network of 50 RDAs around Australia who all have the same regional investment framework and charter to work to. I think I've covered the other points there, but particularly I think in relation to how RDAs work with local businesses, and what you might get from today is that we are able to assist with advocacy and support for regional development, delivering some activities are fee for service and some activities are part of the core business that we do, such as grant application support, skilled migration, and we've recently been successful in getting a designated area migration agreement that covers this area, which means that employer-sponsored visas will be more streamlined and have some, depending on one of the 129 occupations that we're looking at, have particular compensation against those particular occupations, such as the age of staff or the level of English that they have, that sort of thing. We are also part of Regional Australia Institute's Alliance, Activators Alliance, and the Move to More campaign, which is a population attraction campaign. We've recently expanded the Country Change Population Attraction Program, RDA Riverina's program, with generous sponsorship from Transgrid through RDA Riverina. Country Change is a bespoke population attraction program for our local government areas, and you can find some information at the back of the room if you're interested in that later today. We also, Jobs Riverina Murray is a part of that overall project. It's an online employment ecosystem where people who are looking for work upload their CVs, and people who have work are able to post their jobs. So I will leave it at that to continue the conversation with me about those things after today. And I'd like...
It's great to be here. We too are fortunate enough to work across this great country. So, yeah, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we meet today and pay our respects to their culture, their elders past and present. Today, I guess the focus for me is to sort of set some context, I think. There's a lot of opportunity in your region. There's a lot of large-scale projects, either, in proposal, being approved or going through a process that may have significant impact. And I guess what we want to do today, do you want me just to tip that up a bit? What we want to do today is just sort of set the scene about where we're at and what that means, particularly in a Wentworth. I'm going to focus in on Wentworth and as well as obviously Mildura, given the relationship between the two LGAs, just to explore the likelihood and the opportunities and how we might capitalise on those investment opportunities. Because what is local in terms of I guess impact is really something we need to better understand. And so I'll get to that eventually. And then I just wanted to spend some time setting the scene around what we're observing through some economic estimates. And we have done some work on behalf of Wentworth Shire looking at forecasts. So I'm just going to explore what that currently looks like, recognising that forecasts can change and interventions and investment and policy decisions can make an impact on what we know now. So that's the focus today is not necessarily going to be burying into each project that's happening in the region and saying, right, what does this mean for my business? It's probably more about, because we're going to have a few other guests with us today who can talk to some of those other projects, but it's really going to be looking at, given what we are, given our local capability right now, what does that mean for us? And could we do more? How might we position into the future? So when we look at Wentworth, there's quite a bit of little green lines under these indicators. So just as a snapshot, 7,000 people or 7,600 people. If you go down a couple on the left there, forecast to grow over the next 25 years, thereabouts. Gross regional product is up in terms of estimates, year on year, and it represents, $667 million. Output, which is essentially a measure of total revenue or total sales by businesses, represents, it's always the highest number, by the way, output. So, you know, we encourage people not necessarily to report on output because it's not always, you know, it's money in the pocket, but you've got to pay wages and salaries and taxes and, you know, a whole bunch of stuff. So $1.4 billion though. Unemployment level is actually really quite, you know, relatively low, but there's another story there often around labour force and who's actually in the workforce. Businesses, they're down in total, but actually that doesn't tell the full picture because I think around 11 or 12 businesses have actually grown into that sort of larger scale. So we report on, you know, micro businesses, which could be a person with a shingle, you know, or it could be I employed up to 4 people, or, you know, 4 to 19, and then once they get to 20, they become sort of reported at a higher level. And we've had quite a few that have sort of oscillated, so they've dropped in total, but in aggregate, we've actually seen probably more growth in some larger businesses. So look, in general, you know, on face value at this level, pretty healthy, you know. But when we look a little bit deeper in terms of where jobs are, now this is a tricky chart to slightly look at. There's 2 measures of zero here. At the top, which refers to the darker chart, the zeros to the right, and then at the bottom, which represents the light blue values, which is actually the output. The zero is oops, thank you. I can probably point, that might make things easier. Where can I point to? Sorry, I'll just jump out of the way here. I can raise my voice. So, yeah, what we're seeing here is, so this is the change. We're looking at change between in employment rates. So if you just go down the industry sector, and perhaps you can associate yourself with one of those industry sectors, thank you. They're very responsive, the team here. And you can see here that we've seen growth in jobs in often sort of more population serving, so other services, healthcare, education, public admin, some professional services as well. But we're actually seeing a decline in total revenue, except in mining. So we've seen a drop-off in job numbers in ag and manufacturing. So this is within the context of Wentworth. So in total, your output has increased, but if we took mining out of the picture, you're basically on par with the levels that we had, you know, 5-6 years ago. And that is sort of, you know, yes, gross regional product is up, and largely in and around some of these commodities we just spoke about. But you can see it's been a little bit bumpy in terms of change. So this is sort of looking at the value left over after economic activity. And when we look at Wentworth and we compare it to the broader region, and really, I guess you can see the lines smooth out a bit. And essentially what this means, you can just see a little bit bumpier in Wentworth, smoothed out in Mildura, Wentworth, and then smoother again when we cast it at a state level. And so it's not to say that bigger is always better, but it's more to sort of get to this point that diversity in your economic base assists you in sort of riding out those fluctuations. And there's probably people here that, you know that feeling a lot more than I do. So, yeah, it's an important point, though, in terms of opportunity and how you might respond. And if you've got skills locally, you can respond. And if you don't, then you potentially miss out on those. So this is a chart looking, we were looking at similar numbers, but this is, again, total revenue. And I'm just looking at Wentworth versus Mildura. And it's come up pretty small and terrible, actually, for you to be able to see that. I wasn't sure how big the room was going to be. I can come back and I'll talk you through it. So the green is ag, okay? And so this is picking up essentially horticulture, manufacturing. This is, beverage, wine, other food product manufacturing, construction. So the Wentworth is obviously, in general, a smaller economy than the combined area of Wentworth, Mildura. And you can see obviously the role of, other things like, as I've said here, city-centric. So we've got health services and transport, logistics and professional services and a few other areas there as well, where obviously the role of Mildura picks up those opportunities. I guess the key point is this mining impact has been pretty substantial. Although there's obviously signs that we'll start seeing come through where, and I think Ken will talk to this as well in a local context around urban development and housing and other things. The employment story is similar, but I guess what I wanted to just sort of walk you through here is just the fundamentals, because leveraging opportunity is about what you've got to leverage it with. And in this context, obviously the scale is varied, but fundamentally, the underpinnings, as remain. Horticulture, wine, health, mining, that's 50% of your local employment, give or take. And in the Mildura context, it's pretty similar, although we're obviously getting retail and construction skills, feeding through there. Look, exports is the other one here. So exports is a fantastic measure because it's all about getting other people to pay for your goods that are in town, basically. And look, I'm not trying to say the visitor economy is not important. It absolutely is important. But you can see from this chart and the comments on here, by comparison, the tourism, the visitor economy is just not, it doesn't pack the punch that we see from the export dollars that are generated through horticulture, food, and you can, combined, 2.154 billion in the Wentworth, Mildura region, whereas, our estimates of tourism output, which is essentially an export, you're basically selling a local product, to visitors who otherwise wouldn't spend their money here. It's just so significant. So, all right, population dynamics. This is I feel a bit hemmed in here. Where will I stand? I'll stand in the middle. So this is the national context of how's Australia's been going in terms of the population dynamics. And essentially we're looking at the components of change. So we're looking at births and deaths and, what does that mean for natural change? And it's forecast, essentially, for deaths to outstrip births. And that's a national trend. So it's already started, really, and this is why the sort of impact of COVID accentuated this, and obviously we're seeing now a return, or sometimes in some areas, expanded levels of inward migration. And I raise this issue because it really goes to who's going to do the work, where is the economic productivity going to come from, and how might your local region respond to change. Fertility rates have generally been dropping, but there's uncertainty here. So when we look at, so nationally you can see in general it's been trending downwards. And again, are we going to have more single homes? Are we going to have more people living alone? Are we going to have less families? Are we going to have less children? Is immigration going to pick up this whole sort of piece of the puzzle in terms of who will be our workforce in 10, 15, 20 years? And this remains true. So it's absolutely present here in this region. It's something that has underpinned the strength of the food product manufacturing in this region from, decades ago. And it remains such an important driver for this country. We have been so welcoming and inclusive in terms of just recognising how, particularly first generation, but it obviously extends, immigrants really drive productivity levels. So when that drops off, like it did when we had the pause, it does have a pretty significant impact on, productivity levels and job creation, etc. So when we look at Wentworth, the components of change here, so the modelling here, you can see the dotted line is actually what we're anticipating to happen in terms of total population. So it is growing, but you can see the rate, it sort of starts to flatten out. And really as we see it right now, the concern is that the average rate of growth diminishes, okay? And so what levers have we got to do to change that? And again, Ken may touch on this in terms of housing, but we're sort of forecast to go from sort of in the first forecast period of 10 years or so, about quarter of 0.25% growth. Now, obviously, in some other regions, it could be 10, 12%. And we are way too, in my view, metropolitan in our thinking around what is growth. So don't worry, I'm an advocate in that space. But if we cast it forward again, if we make it a 20-year period, it's less than 0.2% growth. And really what we're seeing is sort of, again, deaths are forecast to sort of outstrip births, but it takes a while, and I know I'm being sort of flippant in this language about births and deaths, but it does take a while for that impact to occur. And it's really this role of net migration. We're still quite, positive about that role. So we're sort of, at the moment, we're saying, yes, it's going to be an important component over the next few years, and then we see it sort of potentially diminishing. This is a bit hard to read, but we have seen fluctuations, essentially, in public policy. This is what we see. So the federal policy changes, and as a result, so does the rate of the amount of, inward migration from overseas. But overall, while we're growing, there is this sort of slow impact of sort of a decline, and so this again, it's more like a traffic light. What are we going to do about this? Look, this is an indicator, and it's not a predetermined outcome. It's really just to say, what does that mean? How do we address the skills, etc. And I'll just step you through. So 2024, here's some, age groups. And as I flick through, you'll see it slightly change. Elderly, there's a few more older folks, and we get this sort of older worker phase coming through. Okay, that's enough of the stats. So when we talk about, how might we benefit from large-scale investment, for us, it's sort of, what is local investment, okay? Because there can be huge investment opportunities that have national or regional scale, and they're fantastic because they're big and they're bright and they're shiny, but, what does that mean for us in our local community, and how might we all benefit from those? And that sort of leads to this next part of, given what we know about our economy, and I've only just sort of touched on a few things this morning, given what we know about our economy, how do our local industries, in terms of supply chains, how do they leverage that investment? Can they leverage that investment? Are they ready to, have they thought about it? Or are they pretty happy doing what they're doing, And look, obviously capital expenditure is important. It underpins the construction industry and professional services. It supports public administration. It you know, drives a lot of population. It's important as an underpinning for housing when we think about sort of residential activity. And it's often that sort of sight unseen thing at an industry level. You know, often there's this huge amount of investment in non-private, non-residential activity, actually. Actually, I think that was on the first indicator, which we're happy to share these slides. That the non-residential investment is much higher in the region, you know, because it's sort of on farm, in business, big sheds, et cetera, et cetera. It's this stuff that people don't really know about because they, you know, we can look across the road and see, you know, some lots being developed and there will be some houses there. But it's often that work is really important. The issue being, and I think we're seeing this in ag and manufacturing, is if they can't get skills, they're going to invest in technology, and so they'll get output and they will get a capital expenditure, but there won't necessarily be more jobs. Or if they build something bright and shiny and new and there's no new jobs, then it's sort of a zero-sum change. So look, we always say that economists, you know, we're sort of interested in things at the margins. So it's sort of, if something happens, so what? Does something really happen? You know, or is it just a short-term hit? And I think that's the risk that needs to be managed with some of these large projects, you know, really. So what is local? So local investment, you know, can have a regional or statewide impact. So, you know, classic example would be, let's just say that the Mildura Hospital was, you know, doubled or tripled in size and it was $1 billion investment, right? Okay, sorry to put that out there. It's not, there will be some local people involved, but there's also going to be more likely an alliance form and, you know, Melbourne, Sydney, probably Brisbane, maybe Adelaide, will also, they'll be all over it, you know. There'll be finance, there'll be professional services, there'll be, you know, teams in and around sort of, you know, the Tees John Hollands of the world, that sort of thing. And they may look to some real champions in local contractors and all of a sudden, you know, a big sparky firm doubles or something, or all of a sudden, you know, so there will be some benefits. But the challenge is, you know, getting into big projects like that because they're so big and they're, you know, it's a real challenge. So look, I guess the flip side of that is where there is, and I'm using the local example of the mineral deposit, but you know, if there is a local investment that actually unlocks something that is going to generate demand for local jobs within your patch, and it sort of passes the barbecue test, you know, because you know that there are people actually doing the work, and they're actually employed, and oh yeah, so and so's got a job, and they're looking for all these people. You know, that's really that local impact investment that we're wanting to see. So I think this is where things like some of the larger scale renewable and also, you know, for example, the larger transmission and, you know, lines. Well, what does new generation actually mean as we feed into those? So the lines from Robinvale that are a proposed example. Okay, well, is it just that construction side, or is there actually going to be other benefits? So I'll just take, for example, and this is just generic modelling, and I apologise because Edwina said, I want you to tell me about these 3 or 4 big projects, but look, we haven't been engaged by those people. We don't really know those projects that well. And what I've done is essentially we've built models of your local region, and we've just said, look, if there was $1 million investment, it's not a huge amount of money, but if there was $1 million investment, who benefits locally, okay? And so you can see, and this is sort of, I'm just trying to get your head around what we've sort of already unpacked this morning, that the capability or the means of actually supporting that investment varies. So if just looking at the jobs, you know, for every 2 direct jobs that are employed during that project, another job is created, okay, for that period in Wentworth. But in Wentworth, Mildura, we've got a little bit more capability. Well, we've got quite a bit more capability. We've got, other professional services. We've got access to other support networks. We've potentially got other builders and designers. And so that 2 jobs actually supports another 3 jobs in total, okay? And so this is where understanding how your local economy can actually benefit from the ripple effect is what we're getting to. What does that look like? So again, in Wentworth, these are the top 5 industries that are impacted by demand for supply of goods in that services. Okay, so I'm the builder. I've just been given $1 million contract. I need stuff to develop to actually get that project completed. So in Wentworth, manufacturing does okay, wholesale, bit of transport, some utilities, and administrative support services. They're the top 5. And you can see that the impact, though, is greater in the expanded region. And we're tapping into a greater capability in manufacturing. We've got access to professional services, which we didn't have here, to the same level. Transport, wholesale, and some rental. So it's that different. The impact is different, but the benefit is greater because we've been able to leverage that capacity. And I'll just use another example. So this is 10 new jobs ongoing. So let's assume there's 10 new beverage product manufacturing jobs. Okay, and what does that mean? So, well, to support that level of employment in a manufacturing plant, there's a pretty similar impact on the local agricultural demand. I need primary produce, essentially. But then again, you can see some sort of differences. Transport, admin, electricity, but a slightly different role for the broader region, particularly in the professional services and an expanded role, basically, because there's just a bit more depth and more capability. Yeah, so look, I touched on this before. Construction benefits are important. Year on year, they absolutely mean a lot for our economy. We are good at it. There's a lot of people built very successful businesses around it, and they do employ a lot of people. I just want to be clear about that. The issue is they're sort of short-term. There is a risk they become short-term sugar hits, okay? And so, big investment, and then what? So, or particularly if I'm Nick Byrne, I've got a good local professional practice in town. I employ 20 people, and you know what? I want to have that corner building on High Street with my name on it, and I'm going to get a nice new shiny building, but I'm not going to employ any new staff, right? There's a zero-sum change. I've spent some money to put a masthead up. And that's just an analogy. And I think this is the risk with some of these larger projects, these renewables. How are you going to leverage them locally? That's the challenge, I think. And as leaders and as policy developers and as businesses who want to get access to it, I'm not exactly sure of everybody in the room, but if you want to be able to tap into these investments, then, have you got the scale? How can you work into those teams, etc.? Because the risk is basically we build roads, we build some footings, we whack up overseas product, and away we go. Now, I'm being a bit flippant, but I'm just sort of, reminding you of the risk. And look, I used that example already, but we want to see some sort of change beyond just sort of an investment in construction. And this goes to housing as well. So housing that are unoccupied, we do quite a lot of modelling looking at housing, and if we're just building houses for the sake of houses, which hopefully we're not, but then we want to see people in there. We want to see them contributing. There's a social capital, dividend as well, but there's often also that sort of economic capital one as well. So just in wrapping up, I don't know if I've gone too quick, about on time. Look, this diversity of the economic base, and I suppose, it's probably shines out when you've got administrative boundaries on a river, but, you'll benefit most from this sort of local or regional investment. There is a bit of a risk there around this, ageing population in Wentworth to support local employment. That's true in almost every regional, not everyone, but certainly true in a lot of regional communities. And I think there are conversations happening, and there's also, I guess, being open, willing to change, supporting community through that change has really driven great outcomes. And I mean that in terms of, to be more specific, sort of recognising the benefit of multiculturalism and diversity in your population. We can't, I mean, I know it sort of keeps coming back to this, but we cannot sort of go away from sort of recognising the role of, particularly in this region, of hort and then the follow-on food product beverage manufacturing. Combined, they are just so significant. So 66% of exports. And I guess you just need to keep coming back to what is local, and we do it in our work. It's really okay. So you've got this big investment, and people, they have to advocate for their projects. They want to be able to get their projects up, so that's their role, is to sort of spruik these projects and tell us how good they are, and there will be some good in it. Please, I'm not trying to be the naysayer here, but as local community folks who live here and are invested here and have aspirations for your community, how is your local community going to invest? Perhaps the game is more about understanding these supply chains that are ongoing, and how do we invest in those? And is there any marginal benefit? So I'm just going to leave that there as a bit of a thought starter, and hand it back over. Thanks, everybody.
I'm wondering if there's any burning questions that we should tackle now, or will we hold for the panel? No, that's all right. No, I was just, if someone was jumping out of their skin, I wanted to make sure they got a chance. So that's great. I'd like to invite Heidi Foley from Department of Regions New South Wales to give us a bit of, to bring this to a more local level, I guess, with some discussion about sustainable and strategic investments in Wentworth from a state government perspective. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you. I think I'll be right. I'll just stay up here. Hopefully I'm not in the road of the screen. Thanks, everyone, for having me here to find out a little bit more about Department for Regional New South Wales and what our role is in regional development in this part of the world. We have a large focus on sustainable regional industries, and this slide here just gives a bit of a highlight of the key things that we're focusing on from our department's point of view around developing sustainable regional communities. As you may know, last year we had an election, so we've got a new government that's just settling in and starting to get their feet on the ground and getting some traction about the direction that they want to take in this space. And these 4 key focus areas are what they are keen to focus on as we move forward. So the first one there is all about sustainable regional industries, including the emerging and engine industries, which Nick's just touched a little bit on there. So clearly in this part of the world, agriculture, horticulture and manufacturing have been our sustainable engine industries in this part of the world. But over the last probably 10 years, mining is starting to take a much bigger focus in that space, as is the renewable energy sector, which is starting to also creep in with the Leanne, who's going to present later, talking about the role that Elecnor plays in the interconnector that's coming through the region, but also the renewable energy zone that is about to kick off in the southwest of New South Wales, which will create jobs and opportunities in that construction space that Nick was talking about, but then some smaller ongoing operational jobs as well. We've got a big focus on Aboriginal economic development and enterprise on our side of the river, and that's very close to our heart, and trying to create opportunities that can allow self-determination for Aboriginal people to create employment opportunities. We've got a focus around community infrastructure and capacity building, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And the last one there is around improving regional service delivery, including cross-border communities. So the New South Wales Cross-Border Commissioner sits within our part of the Department of New South Wales. So we've got some really strong relationships there between ourselves and the cross-border. So I'll talk on a couple of those key points today. The first will be the community infrastructure and capacity building. So the way that we do that in this part of the world is through investing through grant funding to build local construction job opportunities, which then hopefully will create ongoing operational jobs within the community. So since Department of Regional New South Wales was established, there's been $42 million invested from a state government perspective in this part of, in the Wentworth Shire. Some of that is joint funding. We often do a lot of joint funding with the federal government, and to make some of the bigger projects happen. So partnerships is definitely something that is of interest to both the Australian and state governments. So we're always looking for opportunities to partner to be able to deliver results for all three levels of government, because normally local government gets lucky, and Ken will talk a bit about how they're the ones at the bottom that have to do all the work on the ground and implement these projects. And Wentworth has done a fantastic job of delivering some of those projects over the last 5 years that we've been operating as Department of Regional New South Wales. So most of this money has gone through local government as the funding body to deliver these projects. So I'll just touch briefly on some of them. Ken might talk a bit more in detail. So we had a program called the Stronger Country Community Fund, which invested $5 million in this region. Some of the projects include sporting facility upgrades, the Denton Men's Shed, the Barrett Pavilion at the Wentworth Showgrounds, Wentworth Long Daycare, which is obviously important. If you don't have childcare, then you can't create a workforce. It's really important to be able to tap into the female workforce, especially as employment numbers are declining. We need to maximise every sector that we have to give them every opportunity they can to work. So the Wentworth Long Daycare was a really valuable project to create employment opportunities for people in Wentworth to be able to access childcare close to home. We also, public toilets, we seem to have a really exciting interest in upgrading public toilet facilities, and particularly disabled access, and improving the quality of public toilet available. We had the Kerwell Memorial Hall, the lighting at Altringa Oval, the fantastic Barunga Riverfront that Wentworth has done a fantastic job activating and continues to build on that piece of work. And we're funding the Wentworth Rowing Club. And I forgot to put on here the Wentworth District Medical Centre, who are in the room today, which is launching shortly. There's another program as well which Wentworth has access to, the previous government, called Resources for Regions, which was a funding stream targeted specifically at those communities impacted by the mining sector. And so in the 3 rounds that Wentworth was eligible, they were able to secure $7 million of funding towards that program. And that money has gone towards a range of different projects across the Shire, which I think has been great for Wentworth Council in giving them money to be able to keep that regular, constant supply of construction opportunities, and as they are doing more of that, they're building their capacity in that project management space and employing more and more locals. So you can see there Ken's showing off his baby, the Wentworth Visitor Information Centre, to our Executive Director Harriet White, who was fortunate enough to have Ken take her for a guided tour. And I think Ken will talk a bit more about that shortly. The George Gordon Oval also received some funding from this bucket of money. There was reserve upgrades, more toilet blocks, more wetlands, Pooncarry toilet block, and many others, I'm sure. The other big fund that we had was the Regional Tourism Activation Fund, which provided just under $5 million towards the Wentworth Fibre Optic Symphony Orchestra, which is thanks to Brett Millington here today. He's started the brainchild of the project known as Light State, which pulled together two projects, one from the Wentworth side of the river and one from the Victorian side of the river, to create a light activation tourism project to attract visitors to the region. So while visitor economy isn't as big as mining or tourism, mining or agriculture, we're hoping that with the activation of this product, it will create growth in overnight visitation in Wentworth Shire. Very clever. If you have to see something that's at night time, you generally have to sleep over. So having it for the 2 nights, one in Mildura and one in Wentworth, gives the opportunity to hopefully capitalise on a minimum 2 night stay, and then once they're here we can create opportunities for them to enjoy other benefits from the region. So it's hopeful that that will attract around 178,000 visitors per year, with an estimated output of $53 million for the Wentworth economy. Another program we funded was called the Growing Local Economies Fund, and this was 100% delivered by Wentworth Shire Council. These 2 projects were a fantastic initiative of Wentworth Shire Council, where they upgraded the Wentworth Aerodrome, and rather than contract it out, they used their internal council staff to be able to deliver that program. And that also meant that it created more local job employment opportunities, because the people locally were locals and they didn't bring in external contractors to deliver that program. But also it provided a really great training ground for, I have to confess I did actually work for Wentworth Council at the time, but I saw the number of young people that Wentworth Council took on and trained and upskilled as part of that process, leaving that skills within the community, and those staff are then able to go on and take on other big projects as part of council as employees. So there's some great aerial shots of and some drone footage of this that's taken throughout the project if you jump onto the Wentworth Council website, and you can see how it developed over time, and the young grader drivers learning how to use latest technology around grader driving so that they could deliver a product within millimetres of the specification, which is obviously very important when you're delivering a runway. But then not only did they upskill the locals, they also then saved so much money because they're good fiscal managers, that they were able to actually secure a second runway for the price that they had originally quoted for the one. So they now have, is it a north-south and an east-west runway as a part of that project, because obviously we didn't want any money back, so they took it and extended that project. But those same staff that probably worked on that project, so that was a $9 million project and a fantastic asset for the Wentworth community, because as Mildura and Wentworth have that symbiotic relationship, as the Mildura airport is growing, it means it's creating opportunities for the Wentworth airport to pick up some of those smaller companies that now no longer are viable to work out of the Mildura airport. So it gives us the opportunity that we have 2 high quality runways reasonably close together, And just the other weekend, there was a fantastic fly into the Wentworth Aerodrome. So that brings a group of tourists that could benefit both Wentworth and Mildura, but wouldn't have been able to if they had to fly into the Mildura Airport, for example, where it's got more regular passenger transport. So we can complement each other in those aspects across both sides of the river. But the staff that worked on that project then also probably went to work on the sealing of the Pooncarie-Menindee Road. So for those of you that know, that road has just been fully sealed all the way from Menindee to Pooncarie, which is a really important link for New South Wales people to access the Darling River Run, which is another tourism product that can add value in that tourism space. But it also creates valuable access opportunities for those people that live out there. So they're the funding programs that we had previously, and as we move in, we're still delivering a large number of those projects, and now we're moving into the space to look at what comes next. So the new government has what they call a regional development roadmap of what they're hoping to achieve, and under the regional development roadmap, they initially allocated some money in the budget. So they announced $350 million into a regional development trust fund for sustainable and strategic investment with a focus on priorities that make a real difference to regional communities. So over the last 12 months, they've been going through a process to set up the allocation of that funding, which includes a redefining of the Regional Development Act. It also has involved setting up a new Regional Development Advisory Council with representatives on it from across New South Wales, and that will be the independent body that determines the funding and where the funding is spent. So there's been a process for the short-term appointment of those board members, but then that will there'll be a new process in the next 12 months to elect new people to that board. And so they're just finalising, because the first positions were direct appointments, but moving forward there'll be a more transparent and open process for the membership of that council. And so now we're starting to move into the delivery of those programs, and as our Minister Tara Moriarty has talked, that this reform process ensures a transparent allocation of investment across regional New South Wales as communities face the challenges of workforce attraction, modernising facilities and drought. So the establishment of the Regional Development Advisory Council ensures the future investment in regional communities is guided by local knowledge and expertise, and they have a really strong focus on that place-based approach for that funding through the Regional Development Trust Fund. So now that we've talked about what we fund, I just wanted to touch a little bit on the sustainable regional industries and the piece of work that we do there around engine and emerging industries. So Ken and probably Craig get sick of me. We always talk about planning, and we've done a lot of planning in the region, but I think that hopefully people can see that the planning is starting to come together, and we are trying to build the products so that rather than just be a plan that sits on a shelf, that they're actually actionable plans. So across the country, the Australian government's funded drought resilience plans to be developed in all areas across Australia. Barunga and Wentworth were chosen as one of the first projects to be done in that space, and we've just finished doing the drought resilience plan for the Barunga and Wentworth Shire. It's got some great pieces of focuses in that report. It's focusing on economic, community, environmental, roads, transport, knowledge and capacity building and governance. But particularly it's got some funding to deliver against some of these projects. So the projects that the plan has identified include things such as improving financial literacy for businesses, because if businesses are more financially literate, then when they come upon hard times, they'll be more likely to be able to survive those hard times. It talks about business planning for the same reason. It talks about regional economic diversification And as Nick was saying before, it's really important to have that economic diversification in your community so you can weather those ups and downs. And I service Broken Hill as well, and that community, for example, is really feeling it at the moment with the announcement of the closure of one of their mines. Because they are so heavily reliant on the mining industry, one announcement like that can really impact on the rest of the community. So we're fortunate here, we've got that diversification, but the more diversification we can do, the better. So with the introduction of the renewable energy, is creating opportunities to offset some of that work in the agricultural areas, for example. And there's a lot of properties along the new interconnector that are looking at opportunities to diversify the agricultural income through renewable energy opportunities. Community events, sustainable community and sporting groups. It's really important to have those community networks when you go through drought. And pest and weed management is important for biosecurity, importance of upgrading regional roads, local knowledge capture. One of the things that was talked about a lot during the drought consultation was that it's important for people to have that historical knowledge of what's happened before, because often what's happened before is a predictor of what will happen in the future. And often people lose that knowledge because the turnover of ownership. But before, when it was traditionally family farms, they had that knowledge passed down from generation to generation. Now we're losing some of that. And the other project we've done in the last 18 months since I've been with Regional New South Wales is we've updated the Regional Economic Development Strategy. It's got a lot of things in there that tag on to what Nick was talking about earlier, driving growth in high-value agriculture and value-adding in agricultural product manufacturing, recognising the importance of visitor economy in developing a more diverse economy, growing the mining and construction industries to capitalise on the region's renewable energy generation and storage and transmission opportunities, as well as leveraging cross-border training accessibility to diversify and grow key industries. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute when we talk about the economic development workforce piece of work we've been doing. But we're also funding both Wentworth and Balranald Shires to do their own economic development strategies, and Rachel Williams, who's a board member of RDA Murray, is also the consultant that's preparing those two economic development strategies on behalf of the two councils. So feel free to touch base with Rachel about that. She's in the process of finalising that report at the moment. We've also done some work around early childhood education and care. I mentioned earlier that it's really important for the female workforce to be able to access that care locally, but it also creates job opportunities. So we've just finished a consultation in that space, and we've just started a consultation in Denton around youth. But the big piece of work that we've been working on is around this cross-border engine and emerging industries. So as I mentioned briefly before, there's a lot of opportunities in the region around critical minerals and renewable energy. So it's a bit hard to see on this map because it's such a big area that we're trying to cover. But you can see here that the grey dashed line on that map is the Southwest Renewable Energy Zone in New South Wales, and the grey shaded area is actually, it doesn't show very well on there, but it talks about the agricultural and horticultural footprint that crosses across between New South Wales, Victoria and into South Australia. And when you overlap those two, our workforce is very intertwined, and one of the things that we're very aware of in creating these sustainable communities, as Nick mentioned, it's important not to just have the sugar hits of the construction, but then to move into how do we create sustainable ongoing jobs. And so this map here has, I'm not sure if you can see it very well, but there's 3 colour-coded dots on there. So the brown dots are the critical mineral mining opportunities that are coming to the region that aren't here yet or have just come in the last 12 months. The blue ones are the renewable energy options, and the green ones are large-scale horticultural investments. So with all of these new industries coming into the regions, one of the things we have to be really conscious of is that the new industries don't steal our workforce from our existing industries. So agriculture, horticulture is at a risk of losing a lot of skilled workers to this particular this new incoming workforce, because there's a crossover between the type of people they employ. So it's really important that we look at how do we start to develop that workforce. And so last year we had a forum in Euston to look at this workforce opportunities from a cross-border industry workforce approach. We had 125 people there from the 3 states and the Australian government, as well as industry in the room. And it was an opportunity to highlight the range of opportunities that are coming our way, to start having the conversation with local business people about how can they step up to take advantage of some of these type of options that are coming, because a lot of people locally don't know what their opportunity is to connect with this piece of work. And so I'm really excited to have Leanne here today from Elecnor to talk a bit more about how people can get involved with the Interconnector project and what that might mean. But also because we have a large workforce in Mildura, Wentworth area that's a casual contract type employment workforce. So often when we talk about employment stats, it doesn't really talk about those people that we have that go away for work. So I think everyone in this room, if you're a local, how many people know someone who works away from home during the week? And how many families have you seen break down because they've had that living away, not being present in the relationship, not being present in the family environment? So if we can create more opportunities locally for these people to be able to work and live in the communities here, so that there's this plethora of new projects coming our way, how do we capitalise on that and create opportunities for people to live, work in the same community? So we've got these big projects coming, and as Nick said, it's really important we don't have that sugar hit of just a one-off project. And one of the things that we found when working with the Victorian State Government and New South Wales Government was trying to find out with this cross-border issue of what projects were coming in the pipeline was really tricky, because the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. So it's hard enough within one state to understand all the projects that are coming together. But then when you look that there's 2 big mining projects just about to start. We've got Compass Atlas, which is already happening, 100 kilometres, is it? Probably not quite that far north, the Compass Atlas mine of Balranald. Yeah, about 100 kilometres north. And then you've got just about 15 k's north of Balranald, the Iluka mine, which is just about to start. They're constructing their haul road at the moment. And then you've got Iluka also scoping out a piece of a feasibility piece on between Euston to Golgol, so the full length of the highway. And so just in the Balranald mine on its own, there's 450 jobs in construction and 250 in operations. So that's a big workforce just to be coming from Balranald. But then if you look just over the river, you've got VHM on the Victorian side, and they're looking at an operational workforce of 400. So that's half an hour south of Swan Hill. So in that 200 kilometre radius of Swan Hill, you've got 600 permanent jobs. And how do we capitalise on that and create jobs locally rather than moving away? So talking about the Workforce Forum, we talked about all these things. We came up with some quick wins and some game changers. And one of the quick wins is to establish an industry task force, which we're hoping to do next month to pull people together, and then they'll action the roadmap from that forum that came together. So, so that's what we've been focusing on from a regional economic development perspective.
Overview, and I really appreciate it. I'd ask Ken to come up and bring us to the local context and where council's at with delivering a lot of these projects, what you think the advantages have been, and what's coming down the pipeline. Thanks, Ken.
Do they have my dot points? Righto, ladies and gentlemen, here's where I ad lib because of failing of technology. Okay, so no boredom with the screen, and I'll make it up as I go. So first of all, thanks very much for coming to our patch. Mary and the boards really appreciate how you've seized the opportunity to come and see what Wentworth and surrounds have got on offer. So I think Nick and Hody, who have done all the data and capture around what we do or what we haven't done. So for me, I'll wind back through a little bit of history of some of those programs and how that's impacted on our council and our community. Probably started out with major state infrastructure coming our way, and that was the Broken Hill Pipeline. Well, look out. Now I've got to regroup. All right, so there, ladies and gentlemen, is something that Hody mentioned. That's our Barunga riverfront. That was a funded project, and through that, there's always add-ons. That was decimated by flood, and now we've regrouped again. Adjacent to that is the Barunga Caravan Park, who hasn't been so fortunate enough to regain their momentum and be re-established. What I aim to sort of talk about today is that you might talk about one piece or one parcel, but it really is what makes that a better commodity. In relation to this one, we built the playground down there, but then we didn't have paths. Then we had to build 1.5 kilometres of paths and networks to achieve that. Next one. Okay, our previous talks have been a lot about mining. In our world, 20 years ago, we probably didn't hear too much about mineral sands. We're probably talking about gypsum and gravel, bentonite and salt, and they're all products of our local community. So, you know, the Morello gypsum and Barunga gypsum have been going on for years. Believe it or not, Arumpo bentonite, a highly sought after commodity. It's got technical aspects where it can basically seal a hole, and we had to physically use that when a levee breached during the recent floods. And also in terms of it just being here and mined up at Arumpo, 90 k's on the Arumpo Road towards the World Heritage Area. It's also, if you've got a cat and you're buying your product out of Coles, Woolworths or Aldi, it's more than likely packaged here in Barunga. Obviously with the environment, the protection and quality of water, there's a salt interception scheme here at Barunga which basically takes water and harvests salt out, and your pink salt is probably a product also of Barunga. 20 years ago, mineral sands became the commodity of where you used to maybe run an old ewe or a cow per acre, and then all of a sudden you've got mineral sands, which is a highly sought after commodity. Out in our shire, you had the Pooncarie, which started out as BMAX, then became Crystal and Tronox, and obviously we've got Iluka and RZ coming on board. Highly sought after products, but once again you come into that. You know, I'd been in bush councils previously in Barunga and Hay, and I'd never seen it where a mine comes to town and all of a sudden they set up a camp of a couple of hundred people. Pooncarie probably did well out of it, and that's what you see in this type of development where Pooncarie probably didn't have fuel at the shop at some point in time, but then it gained confidence in it, and the pub and the store and another cafe actually opened up. So you see the benefit of these mining companies come to town, but there is that sugar fix aspect of it because Pooncarie is just about to close down, but obviously it opens up other opportunities for some of the working material to be shared between RZ and going across to Atlas Campaspe, I think. Next one. That's where I started previously. So the Broken Hill pipeline, so the security of Broken Hill water is now extracted out of Wentworth, out of the Murray system. But they come to town and set up 2 camps between Wentworth and Broken Hill. I think they housed about 300. And in essence, they've gone. They've been gone and left us, I think, with an employment of 4 people just driving around in utes. Barunga Health One, a $10 million facility, obviously with the growth and expansion that we have and these mines coming and going, we need added health benefits or skill sets around that. So Barunga Health One was built on the corner of the Silver City Highway and Pittman Avenue at a cost of about $10 million. The Wentworth Hospital is due to be renewed. It's a $30 million government funded. In the port of Wentworth, the town of Wentworth, we'd done a strategic plan of 2016 where we thought that the Wentworth Hospital would be in the township. Health infrastructure and others had a different point of view, and the hospital will be constructed on its existing site. Contracts have been let for that, but like Nick indicated there before, I think the contractors come out of northern New South Wales, but they have engaged local contractors, or Waters Excavation, are doing the demolition, and they've had others on board. So there is that impact of, while they might come from far and wide, they need local skills and knowledge. As Hody and Nick have alluded to, so renewable energy zone here, Barunga's within the zone and out Wentworth is not within the zone. But to date, we've had interest, and obviously with the expansion of the capacity of the power line and the Barunga substation, we've had interest of 3 wind farms and 3 solar farms. There's only a certain capacity within that infrastructure, and I guess we'll see how that unfolds, but I'm thinking the Shire will definitely see a wind farm or 2, which it hasn't seen before, and probably a solar farm in and around that infrastructure. As Hody's alluded to, Wentworth Shire Council's done pretty well. Damn COVID, damn the floods, but here we are, going quite well. Wentworth Aerodrome, $9.2 million. I'm a general manager of Proudness that sits on the iconic junction of the 2 greatest rivers on the gateway to the World Heritage Area. And for me, I'm probably an old road rates and rubbish local government bloke. It turns out I've been in it for 40 years, but now I've got to turn my mind to delivering some better outcomes around tourism and promotion and events. So Hody's nominated pretty much all the money that's come into us, but the Wentworth Aerodrome, obviously $9.2 million, our own resources, delivered better than what we actually put in for in the business case, and that was, like Hody indicated, it was all about the skills and abilities and knowledge and resources within our own team. The Visitors Centre, ladies and gentlemen, this is my pride and joy. This is futuristically, Mary, bring the board back and we'll be having our discussion up overlooking the Darling River, adjacent to the council chambers and the mayor's domain futuristically. So we hope to be in there in August. It takes all of our current administration team, the council chambers, the library, a visitor information centre, interpretive space, a conference space, and we do that in the old disused Wentworth Club building. And ladies and gentlemen, I think it's just going to be the icon of the West. I'm really, really proud of that one. With the caravan park, council seen fit in previous years to secure the lease of the caravan park. It too was decimated by flood, and now we're just in the rebuild phase. Construction will be completed on that in about 6 or 8 weeks. We're hoping, and we're doing negotiation with a future leasee. The ceiling of the Mindy Road, $9.6 million. Now you can have that Darling River Run experience on a bitumen road, and you can divert off to through the World Heritage Area, and Craig and I are working on signage to deliver some better outcomes for tourism and promotion. So thanks to Connie that's put together a business case through the JO, and we're looking forward to delivering some outcomes around that. Obviously, the gateway to Mungo, although we've got to acknowledge that there's a loop road from Barunga, another $5 million upgrade of that. FOZO, a $7 million project for which Hody just informed us that we've received 5. So anyone with contacts in the federal arena of the growing regions money stream would be much appreciated. That's the Bruce Munro world-renowned installation. Mr. Millington's here today. He's worked his magic to get us to where we are, although he's moved over to another side. But we're going to deliver this outcome. Council itself see an opportunity to possibly offer an alternative site. So it's concept and it's yet to be confirmed. But council purchased a parcel of land in between the iconic Perry Sandhills and Thurgoa Lagoon. So the tourist event or experience may very well be that you come into the port of Wentworth, you have a look at our interpretive space, you be wined and dined at one of the local hotels, you experience the junction of the two greatest rivers, you wander down past the Loch and Weir through Thurgoa Lagoon, maybe some indigenous native bush tucker, and then onto the light state installation where you just watch the sun go down over the Perry Sandhills and enjoy it all, and go back to town or wherever you want to rest your head that night. So that's the tourism aspect of it. Thank you. In everything there needs to be a trust and confidence, and what we've seen to date is that the Midway market was a private investment where a local businessman who owns the service station next door seen fit that there's going to be some things happening in Barunga and Golgol and Wentworth, and with the added benefit of just over the river from Mildura, I'll invest in the Midway market, where he constructed a supermarket with a chemist and a few shops, which is servicing our little community very well at the moment. On the right is the vision of the Kelly's racing team, Todd and Rick Kelly and John Kelly and family. The Trentham Waters, $25 million cabin park. With the tourism that I've talked about, we'd welcome any opportunity for additional accommodation to house and support those. And adjacent to that Trentham Waters, there's the Cliffs Highway Service Centre yet to be opened, which is another $10 million investment by a local Ampol distributor. So that's pretty much about business and whatever else, but the reality is and I'm glad that Nick pointed out that we are a growing local government area, and part of that, I've been here for 22 years and my former role was in that development area, and I used to capture the data of suburbs and how housing and development of lots happened, and it was always Barunga and Golgol. There was times when I recorded nil for Wentworth and Darton, but what we're actually experiencing now is that Barunga and Golgol continue to grow. So we did a structure plan of 2007, and we determined then that there'd be a 2,000 lot yield up until about the year 2050. We're going to deliver that before 2040, and with that, while it's good, it's probably problematic by the fact of water infrastructure. So with growth comes expectation and desire to have better services. It's not out of the question to expect a reasonable water pressure. So we've got a lot of work to do around that. What I am seeing in Wentworth itself, riverfront development, within the town, within the levee bank, another subdivision, and another one over near the showground. So they're all in the design phase. Darton, just adjacent to Golf Course Road, there's a local family who's diversifying. They're well known for their construction and work, and they have taken out their trees and they'll turn that into residential allotments. And the Barunga, I see Mr McNabb in the room, Barunga industrial land. The first industrial estate was developed way back in the early 2000s, and it was a slow take-up. The allotments of land were probably too large, and they went through a subdivision phase, and now that is nearly full. I'm on the table with Jean O'Connor, who's part of that development. So I think we're offering diversity in both lifestyle living for residential land. The young families are supporting the Barunga Gold development end. Going back to Wentworth, in terms of industry, Murray House was the most expanding industry growth in there. So as the 2016 Wentworth Sustainable Strategy demonstrated, Murray House, they'll buy our current council chambers and library and expand further. Our existing building, council determined to lease that out to a university, Danielle White's group through the Broken Hill University, and that'll offer opportunity for training and development of those associated in the health field. Sorry to digress, but yeah. I guess I've been talking about pretty much, the glamour and glitz of mining and renewables and whatever else, but you can't underestimate our traditional product and how this region was established on horticultural viticulture. But as been pointed out today, there's that diversity. So, we've got cellar doors now popping up. We've got diversity in what's grown. But where my house is situated today, just here in Golgol, was trees only about 4 years ago. So customers of Western Murray Irrigation, so this irrigation area here, it doesn't take away from it. There's always been this opportunity where if something is taken away or changed or diversified or whatever else, something is taking its place. So I think there's, almonds are mentioned up there. So out at Outback Almonds, while they've got almonds, they've got glamping cabins. So there's always opportunity for someone to seize a thought bubble and take it to the next level of opportunity. The summary for me is that things change, things diversify, but as a community, as a shire, we move with that and we seem to reap the rewards. Resources can be that in the ground, or it can be water, it can be skills, knowledge, experience. Us as a council have always seen fit to advocate strongly and try and make what we can out of anything that is made available to us, whether it was, with respect, I was part of the thought bubble around Trentham Waters when John Kelly came into my office. We advocated strongly and we changed zoning on land. And then there's that facilitation. But having said that, we always need partners. We always need someone to help and guide us and be part of that risk, particularly when you're talking big dollars and business that we have today. I mean, it's significant, but it's an enjoyable and appreciated aspect that when you do see some of things come to fruition. It's just the way of the world, and we're pretty proud of what is happening in Wentworth, and that is not the accommodation. We're short on in accommodation, particularly if we're going to have a light state. This is to accommodate the desires and needs and wishes of those who want to put their hand up and take on board and do anything. And Wentworth is worth the drive, worth the investment, and thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ken. I think it's very obvious, it's quite the winning streak for the last 40 years, and I really would commend Wentworth Council's resilience and self-reliance. And, I know when we were looking at drought resilience, you had all all the goods ready to go from experience of delivering lots of other activities and that thinking over time. It's also really great to see you outline the private investment as well as the different levels of public partnership investment and the diversity that that brings. I remember looking at some modelling for the Trentham Waters investment, and it would quadruple the tourism dollar in the Wentworth local government area. So these investments do look like what Nick's talking about, that they have that long ongoing effect on creating jobs. So it's really good to see that depth in Wentworth Council area. Leanne, I'd like to invite you to come up and, if we can, give us a 10-minute bringing it back to, the question, I guess, of the lived experience of delivering large projects on behalf of Transgrid and Elecnor Australia, and also some particular tips for small businesses and the support agencies about how we help small businesses make the most of that. And then we'll have 10 to 15 minutes of question time in the panel. Thank you.
So just to introduce myself, so I'm the Local Industry Participation Manager with Elecnor Australia. So Elecnor Australia is the delivery partner for Energy Connect. So just to give, starting off, so Transgrid is delivering the critical infrastructure and the priority projects identified by the New South Wales and federal government to enable Australia's renewable energy resource or renewable energy program to progress. The Murray region and also the Riverina region are really central to that renewable energy zone as well. And we're really committed to actually maximising both the positive and the economic benefits to local regions. So as the delivery partner with Elecnor, so we are the engineering, the procurement and the construction components. So we go and we will design and source all of those products to bring that power line into construction. Together with Transgrid, we're really focused on providing that meaning and lasting relationship because our infrastructure is going to be here for a while. We want to make sure that we've got that nice relationship while we're here. I'm just going to turn my notes over. Sorry. That would be good, actually. I just didn't want to stand in front of the... Okay, so at a glance, Energy Connect is a $1.8 billion project. So there are 700 kilometres of high voltage transmission line. So to give you an idea, from the South Australian border to Barunga, we're putting in a 200 kilovolt dual circuit line. And then from Barunga all the way across to our Dinawan substation, we're actually putting in a 330 kV line. And then from Dinawan substation to Wagga Wagga, we're putting in a 500 kV line. So they're all dual circuit lines. The construction will have about 1,500 transmission towers and remarkably around 10,000 kilometres of conductor wire will be required to actually string those lines. We're also putting in, we're upgrading 2 substations, so the Barunga substation out here and also the Wagga substation will be upgraded along with a brand new substation that we'll be building at Dinawan. To support the project construction, we're also putting in 5 workers' camps. So we've got one here in Wentworth out at Rentmar Road, we've got the big one at Barunga. We've got another one to be constructed at the Cub Highway, along with Lockhart, which is currently operational, and Dinawan, which is under construction. So Dinawan will be our largest workers' compound that we're actually building. Okay, so on to the important bits. So support for local business. So the figures that I'm quoting here at the moment are as of this month, so how much we've actually spent along the construction corridor at the moment. So $125 million is invested in regional communities. And at this stage, we've used over 180 local and First Nations businesses in the Riverina, Murray and Sunraysia regions. So just to answer a question or a comment that was made earlier, what do we consider local? So we consider local to be businesses that have a site or their main head office along that Riverina, Murray and Sunraysia RDA regions. So we gather all of the spend total from those and we call that local. So basically, Transgrid's major projects such as Energy Connect are helping to support growing the businesses of that critical infrastructure. So spending with these local businesses helps to grow and develop businesses. And this is what we've invested so far. And considering that we're still probably halfway through the project, that figure is going to grow even further. In terms of local businesses, for example, some of the local businesses we've been using is Mawson's and also Garraway Group. So the teams have been doing a lot of work on the construction of the foundations out at the substation. These teams together have poured over 170 cubic metres of concrete in 2 separate pours to pour the foundations for some of the critical equipment that goes onto that substation. Just to give you an idea of that, it's about 120 truckloads of concrete to do one of those pours on the substation foundations. Mawson's is also supplying the concrete for the footings and to support the tiles across the alignment of the project. So 2 companies that have started here and they're providing a significant impact on the project. So across the Mildura and the Wentworth local government areas and during the construction, we've engaged around 85 local businesses just in this region, and this economic benefit is around $60 million. So you can see that a lot of the construction at this stage has been over in this western section, but that's a fair contribution to the local environment. The types of businesses that we've been engaging in this region are, to start off with, we engage with a lot of accommodation providers because we didn't have our camp construction and we needed to house those workers while we were here. And then also civil and earth contractors, quarry and concrete, as we've mentioned, but also plant and equipment hire. So we've got a couple of large companies here that we've been doing a lot of equipment hire on. We've purchased light vehicles, heavy vehicles. So a lot of cars that you see driving around have come from this region, also some of the water trucks and the heavy vehicles as well. Cranes and fabrication services, down to security, electrical and vehicle repairs. So there's a whole range of businesses that we've actually been utilising across the construction. Okay, so just to touch on those accommodation camps. So one of the big issues one of the big, issues we're all aware of, that when a major project comes to town, having somewhere to actually put the workers is a really challenging environment. I'm not sure about the accommodation requirements over in this area, but in Wagga, accommodation is down below 1% of availability. So it really is hard to find places for those workers. So the accommodation camps that we've put in are expected to house up to 1,400 workers during the construction of our project. And that will come in sort of ebbs and flows as this construction line goes along. The camp here at Barunga holds over 340 workers alone. And as you can see, it's got some good facilities that make it quite comfortable for the workers when they're here. More importantly, it also is designed to reduce the travel time for our workers. So with a 700 kilometre construction line, we try and make sure that our workers have to travel no further than an hour from their place of work to their area of accommodation. It's all designed to reduce that fatigue management as we go through. So, okay, we've mentioned previously our Barunga substation. So this is actually one of the latest pictures of the construction that we've got so far. It's out on a rumpo road, and it's actually designed act as the main hub for the connection between New South Wales, South Australia and Victoria in the Energy Connect project. So this will link up the 3 states of electricity. This is a 16-hectare construction, and it will be the most complex in the Southern Hemisphere for technology and engineering. Just to give you an idea of the size, so any football enthusiasts in the room, it's about 20 football fields laid out in a grid. So it's quite a big construction. People from all over Australia, and I guess to a degree overseas, have come to work on this groundbreaking project, and it provides that critical infrastructure for energy transmission. Okay, touching a bit on employment. So the project is expected to create up to about 1,500 jobs and provide that economic boost to the communities. So just looking back in preparation for today, I've looked at some of the stats in regards to where home location is for some of the workers on the project. So it's fair to say that over in the Mildura area, the Mildura Wentworth location as being their home location, in well over 100 workers so far on the project. So that's a significant local contribution where we've got quite a number of workers who, as was mentioned earlier, have actually come back to home to actually work on this project rather than actually working away. So it gives sort of life that nice family balance as well. Okay, I've got that one. In regards to actual improving skills, so with our project, and I guess to a degree some of the major projects that do come to town, it's quite a skilled workforce often that we will require. So one of the, we've been building transmission lines in Australia for quite some time, but one of the skill sets that we discovered that we don't actually have is the transmission tower constructions. So you're the ones who actually put the towers up and actually string the lines. So we've actually created a Legacy 100 program. And this is a program where we are training 100 local workers to be the transmission line constructors of the future. So we've started that program back in September. We take in about 8 applicants each time, so they'll work through the program, and each month we'll take on a further 8 applicants. And as we go through, they'll do about 50 days of actual physical theory training, and then they'll move out to Barunga, where a lot of them are at the moment, and they'll go and they'll do that on-the-job training. So they'll do that training for about 4 months, and then they'll get to a period where they've completed a Cert 2 in transmission line construction, and then they will then go out and work on the project, and when our project is finished, they will then become part of the energy sector or the transmission line construction as we move forward. So effectively, we're trying to grow our own workers as we move forward. Interest in the project, in the program has been phenomenal. So we've got a combination of, it's around about 50% of local workers, so as in local from these regions have actually joined the program. And then we've got some other ones from, I guess, family members or some labourers who had started the jobs have actually come and joined this program as well. So it's been very successful, and we're very much on track to get to that 100 workers that we're actually working on. So in terms of one last one, in terms of supporting the community, so Transgrid also wants to make that really positive difference in the community, and they've got what they call their Community Partnerships program. So it's open sort of twice a year, so March and September, and what they do is they invite local not-for-profit communities to apply for funding to help to build their programs or also infrastructure. So just an example, this is one of Transgrid's recent award ones, which is the Inland Botanical Gardens. So they sought some funding to actually to lift the profile of the actual gardens, to advertise and to bring that in. So in terms of a couple of, I guess, anecdotes in going through, it's a 700-kilometre project, so it makes hard sometimes finding a workforce that is moving as we go along. So we spent sort of almost 2 years over in the western, what we refer to as the western section. A lot of that construction is now coming to a completion, and we're now sort of replicating that infrastructure over in the eastern section. Connecting with local businesses, we have a reasonably high standard in terms of what we would expect from businesses in terms of quality management systems, accreditation. So it's a lot of work for local businesses to get on board. So my recommendation to local businesses is when you hear that infrastructure is coming, is to get in contact with them early to find out what their requirements are. You know, what are the accreditation standards they need? What sort of capacity will they be looking for? We hear it quite a lot along the construction corridor that businesses are reaching capacity already. It's very hard to actually take on the extra infrastructure that's coming. So, you know, how do we increase that capability of those businesses before the construction gets here to allow them to take on extra workers and to build on their business that they've already got? So getting in early, finding out exactly what you need, and also tapping in as to with business development services to see if there's any development you can help with as well. The other one is workforce. You know, finding a workforce is challenging, and also going down the track of, you know, as Hody mentioned, trying to establish that workforce prior to the infrastructure projects coming, so that we know what we need. We've got them skilled to a level that we can sort of get them on the project fairly early. So pretty much that's probably my overview of the project and the economic benefits that we hope we've brought to the community.
Thanks very much, Leanne. I'd like to invite the panellists to come and take a seat on the hot stage so that we can energy zone in the order of 32 billion plus $6 or $8 billion worth of projects being planned. So it is only likely that $5 or $6 billion worth of those projects will actually come to fruition, but there is an incredible amount of pressure on local businesses, councils, state government, federal government to be supporting the planning, the social impact assessments, the environmental impact assessments and things. And that's something that we're really particularly aware of, the pressure that that's putting on local leaders, community leaders, and our government and private support agencies. So I think that is something that we need to be conscious of, that there's planning for, at this stage, for in the order of 25 times the amount of renewable energy production in the region that is planned for. So the transmission line, Energy Connect, has opened up a massive opportunity that isn't just going to be in the next 2 years or 5 years. It's a very long-term game. So Nick, I'm wondering if you might just, kick us off with a comment, hearing what everyone's talked about, how you think that fits with the modelling, and what impacts for local businesses. And I guess if you have a question for another panellist, feel free to ask your question.
Thanks, Edwina. There's clearly, good momentum, and I did feel like I was being a bit of a Monday morning naysayer at the start, but the intention really is to say it's not all about one, eggs in one basket. And so, I think the work that was explored around, investing in the visitor economy, etc., has some real benefits. I was taken just by Leanne's comments about, the connecting with businesses, and I think this issue around compliance, it's a real challenge for small, medium enterprises, to invest in kind of corporate HR risk areas, because often they're very busy, cracking on. And not to diminish that issue, but I was just, and I don't know whether others in the room have been addressing this, but I was struck by that because, this issue of quickly, let's put a quality system together to, ensure a standard is not something you can do very easily. I've got to meet 14,001 or whatever, that sort of stuff. I mean, you can't just switch that stuff on. And so I wonder if that's, there's a question there about, is that an area that we invest in more broadly? Because there's I don't think these large-scale projects are going to go away. And the appetite for investment, particularly like just to keep on the renewables focus, it's significant in pretty much every state in terms of, I guess, hitting, abatement and net zero sort of targets. And the transition in generation and what that means, whether it's about, the movement, in both directions of electricity, or whether it's about generation within a region. And I think because the momentum and the rapid response that organisations like Elecnor are having to undertake, it gets to the point where, well, how do we get the locals involved? I imagine. So anyway, I think there's potentially some really practical areas that are worth exploring that might have real positive attributes for locals.
Can I just comment on that? So one of the things is a lot of that sort of that accreditation, that quality management system also comes down to where they want to act within that construction as it comes along. So if you're looking for those major subcontractors that want to partner, such as, I guess to a degree, Garraway, and they're the level where we kind of need that sort of accreditation. But if local businesses are wanting to work under those subcontractors as they come in, then it's a different sort of playing field. So it's really businesses understanding initially where they fit into those constructions as they come, and then how they want to work through to be part of that as well. And some of the ones that we I wouldn't have encountered or wouldn't have thought of is monitoring systems on vehicles when plant is on construction sites and things like that. So if your business has got those abilities, then that's great. But if it may be, and I'm only saying maybe, it depends on the individual or the major tier 1 construction company that's doing it as to what all of those requirements are when they bring it in. So find out what they are. As that information, as they're coming to town, really, and be aware of what you need to know.
I think one of the things that we have working in our favour is that we have a very large workforce that's had a lot to do with the mining sector. And so because we have a large number of employees that have interacted with that space, they understand that there's very different requirements on a mine site. If you go to a mine site, you have to have certain specs on the vehicles. You have to go through certain quality and safety before you can even go on site. So I think there's opportunities for us at a local level to capitalise on some of that and to start to run some local programs around upskilling our local businesses around how they can take on board some of those learnings from those people that are already out there employed, maybe at lower levels in their organisations, to start to step up and take that real quality and safety focus and bring that to some of the other businesses. And my partner works in that sort of space, and getting to see how businesses have the potential to step up and to do that, but they need the support and business planning and skill development for them to understand that their job is now no longer just out doing construction, but it's the administration that goes behind that as well. And how can we support them, and what training opportunities do we need to provide to help upskill and educate the business sector around that it's not just construction skills that you need now if you want to take your business to that next level. And we were fortunate at our workforce forum to have a lot of those start to get into those businesses, to start having those conversations about how do you upskill. So places like Seaway Intermodal Transport, for example, they're thinking about that stuff all the time, like most of the transport companies have to, because they're going out on these sites. So, how do we then, I'd be interested in hearing from anyone in the audience about opportunities to work with businesses around how to upskill and build that capacity, because that really is creating the workforce for the future. In small to medium-sized enterprises, Because what we don't want is we don't want those sugar hits of external contractors fly in, fly out all the time coming to do this work. And I touched briefly on it about trying to plan the workload that we've got moving forward. If we can do some better work cross-border to identify a pipeline of work that will give them opportunities to apply for work over the next 20 years, it's more likely to give the confidence for someone to invest locally. And I know already there's big construction firms that are thinking about coming to establish themselves in Mildura because they can see the potential and the opportunities that are coming in this part of the world. So how do we create the opportunities, as you said, Leanne, for those local small to medium-sized businesses to step up and take that next step to become the next medium or large-scale businesses that could start here and then grow local business and local employment opportunities?
Thanks, Heidi. I think
I'd just like to make a couple of comments. I mean, for starters, I'm really concerned about the number of businesses that are represented here today. Minimal. Where are the businesses? You know, hands up here, people that have got businesses in this area. Where are the big boys? Because we're talking here mostly about the opportunities for the big boys. We're not talking about opportunities for small people. And the other comment I'd like to make, so is there a problem there that we haven't attracted those people, or do they already know all this type of stuff? That's just a comment. The other comment that concerns me, being involved in horticulture and viticulture, is the differences in the dollars that are paid to people for working. A huge problem for somebody working in the vineyard or working in horticulture. The opportunity to go and work in the mine and get the big bucks. And so there is a movement happening now from agriculture. And so we're losing workers. And, you know, if the farm could pay the same as the mine, they should already be doing it. But it doesn't work that way. You know, we're also hearing the number of people that are absconding from the palm group of program and heading to Sydney to get involved in construction illegally, but still doing it because viticulture is just not, that they're getting better money somewhere else. So just those two comments.
Thanks, Jan, and I think those comments I totally agree. I think that in terms of investment for business development, we, have, Heidi very rightly after our Workforce Industry Forum, we looked at what's the next thing that we need to be activating support for, and it is the small to medium enterprises rather than the large businesses. So, this is a first go at a networking function and introductions. Business New South Wales is a really good opportunity for small to medium businesses. So the ones Nick was talking about, single, sole traders, or the up to 19 employees, they do have a free membership program that entitles businesses to a range of access to policy and infrastructure and things. I would guess that that's not the businesses in the room today. That's more newer businesses and things. But that is an opportunity, I think, to engage Business New South Wales in business development for this region, and also to there are different levels of membership. We have got the information at the back near the Country Change banner. I think it's a really good point about the different sectors competing for the same skills. And we've been talking about a discrete area today, but when we look at the RDA Murray and Riverina footprints, work that we did about 3 years ago indicated a tsunami of 15,000 jobs in the region. They are going to be competing for employees with the existing jobs, as Heidi pointed out at the beginning. That's why RDA Riverina, RDA Murray, the Cross-Border Industry Workforce Forum, we've all been coming together, really trying to bring some attention to this space. But, and RDA Murray is particularly working on migration as an opportunity for businesses to find employees in the region. But it is we're not alone. That's, as Nick pointed out, it's also a national problem, and one that's not going to be easily solved, and a lot of lumps and bumps in the road, I think, Nick, as you said, around matching or bringing in innovative technology that reduces the number of jobs and then changing the skills. And, we are in for, I think, a really tough space in terms of workforce availability in this region, and preparing ourselves for that is one of the best things that we can do.
So my name's Carly. I actually have to be in class in 25 minutes, so I'll make this quick. But my concern is probably, looking at it from my view as a teacher, I haven't seen any of these people, and I know that I work in Victoria, but I haven't seen any of these sorts of people come into our schools. So my concern is, that's fine, like so I'm a primary school teacher, I currently teach PE and maths, but I also then have gone and said, well, these kids, we want them to stay in our region, but what can we put into our schools that they actually might stay in our region and not just go away to uni and stay away? So now I'm doing agriculture, so I'm always, at least the kids have got something they're keen in and they don't just have to study all the time. That's how they see it, even though they still have to do those things, whether they realise it or not. But yeah, so coming into schools and organisations that are coming into our area, if they're looking into the future, well then the kids that are sitting in my year 9, 10 class are the kids that need to know about these things. So as a teacher, I'm always out there trying to find places that my kids can visit and whatever, but some of the main places they visit is when we go to, say, the Mildura Field Days, because that's where they're all together. But trying to get organisations, to come into the education system, because no one wants to work. No kid in my class has any idea that they have to have a job when they get older. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lull in the amount of kids in our region that are going to go to university. There's a lull in any of them that have any hope that they're going to get a good job. So my concern is, how can we promote it in the youth? Like, I'm in there trying to do it, but coming from me, I haven't been teaching the whole time. So I went back to the education system because, well, my own 4 boys were there, so I was a little bit worried about what was going on, but I think it needs outside industries to actually also be helping and development programs.
Carly, that was one of the things that we touched on at the Workforce Forum that we worked together on. So the Cross-Border Industry Workforce Forum has 3 key areas to look at development of the workforce. So one is around developing our own workforce, so building the capacity of young people to be able to see what opportunities there'll be. So they often talk about you can't be what you can't see. And for us, the challenge is with these new industries, kids don't know what the careers look like in that space yet because they haven't ever worked in renewable energy or on an electrical transmission line. So we've got to create those opportunities for that. And what they talked about at the quick wins and game changers for that was that we have the REAP offices, which is in New South Wales, and also the Lens from Victoria, that came together and talked about how do they create those pathways through schools to be able to start showcasing that, and not just at the secondary level, but also starting as young as primary school to start to get them to familiarise and understand the sector. So hopefully through those conversations, we'll start to improve those connections both sides of the river, so that will happen.
Teachers involved in those conversations and people from the education department involved in those conversations?
There was people from New South Wales schools, and there was people from the local learning and employment networks in Victoria, which are the people responsible for the career pathways on the Victorian side.
It's so important to talk to people on the ground that are at the coalface. It's okay to have lots of talk fests, but it's really, really effective when you can drill down and talk to actually people that are working every day.
So that's where some of the benefits were from connecting the industry to the players that are then delivering those programs in schools. Because I know myself, I'd been contacted by a school that wanted a Elecnor to go there or a wind farm to go there and talk about wind farms, but they didn't know who to contact. So it's about creating those connections and being able to create the relationships. And the more that we talk and the more that we share that, then the more people will know about it and hear about it. So keep trying to do that.
Just to quickly add to that, So I've worked a fair bit with an industry group in Bendigo. They're sector focused, so they're a manufacturing group. And they, certainly not, this is what before my involvement in them, they've been real champions. So this is essentially, it came out of a local government exercise. It was a land use planning exercise that brought a range of key businesses together that employed essentially at the time, I think, you know, it was sort of 25% of the local population, or local jobs. And they've gone on and basically, it's been a business-led, essentially. It's been sort of auspiced through local government and it's taken on its own role now. But one of the key things they did with this whole Industry Connect idea, it's probably not the right term because it's probably been used elsewhere, but essentially it was that. It was really getting, you know, young persons, not necessarily at primary school level, I don't think, I could be wrong, but predominantly more at sort of a secondary level through, you know, workplace and often, you know, when kids are getting an opportunity to, I guess, look at industry, and a combination of presentations as well as placements, and you know, and it's really for them, they saw this big skills void, you know, and just a recognition that, as you say, you know, Carly, I mean, I'm the same. I've got a young person who he's pretty sure that money's just going to somehow happen, you know. And I mean, I've been managing, sponsoring, and you know, all that sort of stuff for years. But you know, they don't see it. They just see, and there's a lot of socials about, you know, millions, and it's just all facadism as far as I look at it. So anyway, I think there is this opportunity around industry-led as well. If you can get players that have got the capacity to support it outside of their business in a collective, that's been really powerful. So there's definitely good examples. Leanne, perhaps, or others in that Bendigo region can make connections there as a prototype example.
Thanks, Nick. And I think certainly at the Cross-Border Industry Workforce Forum, we had a number of examples of those school transition engagement programs. And Jan, I absolutely take your point, and I think this is, you know, one of our first steps in connecting with local businesses and hearing that voice. So, you know, Carly, 20 minutes to go till you're in front of a class. I, you know, really appreciate your time this morning. It's a big investment from you guys, and we really appreciate it. I'm going to wrap because I'm, you know, morning tea awaits, and you know, some connections that you might like to make while you're waiting for morning tea. I would just like to ask Mary to give us a quick summation and close, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you. Not the easiest job, but really want to pick up on Jan's point, particularly the bleeding of the local workforce. The engine room of this community, or the engine industries, has been Horton Ag. We need to look after it, we need to respect it, and we need to work out how we can all have our share. And so, yeah, I think, you know, we're the same up in many of our regions right across the RDA, the critical importance of having those long-term sustainable industries, while they might be paying, you know, they are changing, there is improvement in technologies, there is less labour available, and therefore that has forced that move towards technology, but there's still, you know, there's everyday work that needs to be done manually, and that work is what sustains us in our rural communities. I'd just like to thank every one of the panellists, and picking up on some of the points, and Ken, gosh, you know, advocacy, facilitation, partnerships and accommodation, you've done the lot. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and you know, wish you well going forward, and we look forward to our next visit when we get to step into that new event centre, and I'm sure the staff will adjust to their new setting very well. Thank you, Hody, and thank you for giving us the direction of the new government, and knowing there's some significant changes happening there. But that cross-border engine emerging industries planning is so critical, because we shouldn't be thinking state-wise. We've got these state boundaries that are forever barriers to so much of what we want to do. So anything that in the cross-border space, and we look forward to working with our partnering RDAs today, and also some of the other planning that's being done in that space to make sure that we are, you know, accommodating some of the larger projects, but also looking at supporting our engine industries. And I think the space that we really need to focus much more on is that Aboriginal economic and development planning. So I look forward to reading some of that work and participating in those programs as well. Thank you, Nick. Certainly gave us a broad, sweeping view of the local economy and that real messaging that diversity is critical. And we know much more what a sugar hit now is now. And we always sort of talked about it. I used to say that boom and bust, but now we call it a sugar hit. Seeing that, you know, you do have these huge, and Pooncarie is a classic example, Ken, where you get that boom and then, you know, what follows it. And we must really be reminding some of our big industries that we need to be retaining our skills in our communities. We need those skills here, and we need to be sustainable beyond going forward, beyond the big sugar hit at the beginning. Also, thank you very much, Leanne, and thank you for what Transgrid does and contribute to the community. And I know sometimes, you know, you must be a tough gig when you're driving through towns and people saying no to Transgrid, whatever it might be. The effort that has to go into that community engagement, the effort that you must make to work with industries. The opportunities now is to, you know, we can hear today the messaging is talk to our schools, talk to our young people, grow our own workforce. And I hope those that are in industry, that in local business that are here today, engage with our panellists in the break now, because, you know, that networking is what's critical. As Jan said, you can't just talk about it, we've actually got to do something about it. Thank you, everyone.